write a suffrage skit for the Museum of the Grand Prairie virtual program, and I don't have any ideas. I don't know much about the suffrage movement. I think I heard once about the parade of 1913, organized by a woman named Alice Paul, and it was led by Inez Mulholland, who rode a big gray horse, but that's all I really know. I just need a nap first.
Did you want to talk to me?
Who are you?
Well, I'm Alice Paul, head of National American Women's Suffrage Association's Congressional Committee, and I organized the Great Suffrage Parade of 1913.
You're just the person I want to talk to. Tell me more.
First, you should know a bit about the context. The suffragist movement began nearly 40 years before I was born, and my mother took me to rallies when I was a child. Since I had researched sociology in England before earning a PhD in the subject, by the time I was 28, I wanted to put all that together. The parade was my brainchild, and the association endorsed it. I planned it for March 3rd, 1913 in Washington, D.C., the day before President Wilson's inauguration. I badgered the D.C. police into granting me a permit to use Pennsylvania Avenue. I lobbied to get the streetcars shut down. I used my connections to the White House to get a cavalry unit standing by in case the D.C. police could not control the crowd. I arranged for a grandstand to be built on 14th Street. Then I made sure the parade was in the news so often that it was almost considered one of the formal celebrations of Wilson's presidential inauguration.
Oh my, well, did anyone come to the parade?
I arranged for dozens of special train cars carrying hundreds of suffragists to Washington. Each needed a place to stay, so I arranged for hotel rooms as well. I got the Boy Scouts to line the parade route. And I had local women's clubs sell sandwiches and scalloped oysters to the spectators. I imagined we'd have about 4,000 spectators, but we had a few more than that.
Well, how many more?
10,000 and maybe more. My parade was going to be spectacular. The parade was led by Jane Burleson and attendants on horseback. Then, my friend Inez Mulholland, the most beautiful suffragist in the country, would ride her horse, Gray Dawn.
Whoa, Dawn! Whoa!
Who are you?
What? I am Inez Mulholland.
Oh, good one.
I was near the front of the parade. I wore a flowing white robe and rode my glamorous white horse. I was so beautiful that men would stop and stare in admiration.
White horse?
Well, Dawn, Gray Dawn, here's incognito. I didn't want anybody to steal my precious little baby. But I still make quite a sight to see, don't I? And I was able to sing songs as, all the world is sad and dreary, everywhere they roam, while men deny their wives and mothers justice in the state and home.
Following Inez, a wagon with a massive sign we called the Great Demand Banner read, "We demand an amendment to the Constitution of the United States enfranchising the women of this country." After that, 7 sections of marchers, and then floats carrying representatives of nations who already had suffrage: New Zealand, Australia, Finland, Norway, all ridden by costumed participants. Then nations where women enjoy partial suffrage wearing more costumes. All the groups of women wear costumes. The writers group all stain their costumes with ink. Even states where women already can vote send delegations, including members of Congress. Golden chariots, women's marching bands, and college women grouped by alma mater. A massive reproduction of the Liberty Bell. General Rosalie Jones and her army of pilgrims who hike from New York. I designed everything to be visually striking and look good in photographs.
Oh my gosh.
Indeed.
Which way to the parade? I'm ready to march.
Keep walking that way.
When we reached the Treasury Department, dozens of women and girls in classical costumes create scenes meant to represent Columbia summoning justice, charity, liberty, peace, plenty, and hope to the stirring sounds of the triumphal march from Aida.
This parade cost nearly $15,000.
What?
Astounding, isn't it?
Well, so what happened? Did it go as you had planned?
Not exactly. The newspapers loved General Jones and her hikers, and their publicity overshadowed the march. They arrived the day before to a hero's welcome from the public. And then there was a group of African-American women from Howard University who wanted to march. But we were fortunate to have Ida B. Wells march in our Illinois delegation. And then there was a squabble about the colors for the banners leading each section.
Oh dear. I wanted to use green, white, and violet, the colors of the suffrage movement in England.
But the officials said if we adopted those colors, we would be endorsing the militant tactics used by British suffragists, so they insisted we use white and yellow.
Well, so what colors did you use?
I chose all of them. The newspapers would call it a riot of colors. It started out pretty well. The parade started a few minutes late. The first trumpeter sounded the herald, which sent the signal down the route to the next trumpeter, and so on to the Treasury building. Our grandstands were packed. More and more people arrived. Columbia was dressed in armor and called for her virtues. Justice and her attendants were dressed in purple. Charity arrived with children carrying rose petals. Grand Liberty struck a gallant figure, featured prominently in the newspapers. Peace released a dove. Plenty and her attendants and Hope joined, and the picture was complete. Everyone was waiting at the Treasury building for the parade, including First Lady Helen Taft. There, the pageant would take place.
And they waited and waited and waited and waited.
Okay.
When the dancers got cold and went inside the Treasury building to stay warm, the crowd started to leave. The First Lady left. Where was the parade?
10 blocks up Pennsylvania Avenue. The parade was stalled. Spectators had spilled into the street and blocked the marchers. There were no policemen in sight.
From atop gray dawn, I could see the head, and the spectators were not friendly at all, and it was a howling mob.
I got in a car and tried to drive down the route to clear a path. The Boy Scouts were trying to hold the crowd back, but as soon as my car passed, the crowd surged in front of the marchers, blocking their path. Men were yelling insults and profanities at us. The women in the parade felt threatened. Those on horseback could fight back, kicking at the crowd with their boots. Women on foot using their flags to push aggressive men back. The police did nothing.
Gray dawn, and I fought our way to the Treasury building, over an hour late to the pageant.
Meanwhile, President-elect Wilson arrived at the train station and asked, "Where are all the people?" The police answered, "Watching the suffrage parade." Finally, the DC officials called in the cavalry.
The cavalry rode down the parade route toward the Capitol, pushing the crowd back with their horses, and they were not gentle about it.
They rode into the throngs until hooting men and women were forced to retreat. The parade finally got through, but marchers were jeered, grabbed, spat upon, shouted at, and tripped. Policemen joined in the taunts instead of a triumphant parade and pageant. The rally became a meeting of indignation and protest. Very little had gone according to plan.
Every woman arrived at the Treasury building filthy, battered, exhausted, unnerved, insulted, weepy, furious, crazy.
Okay.
Oh, so it was a failure.
No, not at all.
It was perfect.
Wait, who are you?
Susan B. Anthony, don't you recognize me? My picture's right there. The Great Suffrage Parade of 1913 was a turning point, a revival of effort and energy for a movement that was flagging. I had helped start the America Women's Movement, born at that earlier convention, you know, Seneca Falls, 1848. Back then, America was very different. Pre-Civil War, pre-light bulbs, pre-cars. It was still illegal for married women to own property, and very few went to college. Then, in 1869, I helped form the National Women's Suffrage Association and began publishing a newsletter. Here, I have a copy for you.
Oh.
Well, another group of women thought that we were too old, so they formed the American Woman Suffrage Association. Both groups worked in parallel for years, then joined together, but little progress was made until everything changed after the suffrage parade of 1913. It took us 72 long years to get the right to vote. But the 19th Amendment was finally ratified on August 18, 1920. Ladies, look how far we've come. This year is the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote. Yay! They have no idea of how every single inch of ground that we stand upon today has been gained by the hard work of some little handful of women of the past.
Oh, wow. I have learned so much. Thank you, Alice Paul. Thank you, Inez Milholland and Gray Dawn. Thank you, Susan B. Anthony, for all your hard work in getting this movement going.
Hey Carol, how's the skit going?
Oh, Mike, very well. I've been researching the skit, and I think I've learned a lot of information. Women have sure come a long way. I've learned so much about the women's suffrage parade, and I have this silly little tune in my head. All the world is sad and dreary, everywhere they roam, while men deny their wives and mothers justice in the state and home. Hi, I'm Carol Castellan.
Hi, and I'm Julie Waller.
Lucinda Lawrence here.
Katie Stout.
Thank you for watching our suffrage parade skit.